Have you ever considered how treachery may lead to unexpected happiness? What if the heartbreak you feared opened the door to a life you never thought possible? This story is about love, loss, and an incredible twist of fate that converted anguish into joy. But before we get into the narrative, I aim to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support can help make that happen. So, if you appreciate exciting stories like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's get started. I, 33 years old, did not get along well with my mother when I was younger. Simply put, she was abusive. However, that is a topic for another day. I believe that is why I clung to my cousin whenever I could for protection. He was the only one I had. My mother did not reprimand me or even use harsh parenting techniques. She would strike out for whatever excuse she could think of, but most of the time, it was because of something my cousin and I had been into. He didn't live nearby, but we had plenty of time to cause havoc together because we went to the same school. He received just as much heat from his mother as I did from mine. However, that always motivated us. It was as if we had an unspoken agreement that any penalty we received would be worth the memories we were creating. We knew the slaps and verbal eruptions would leave our ears ringing, but we didn't mind. He was more than simply a cousin. He was my first genuine sibling. Not the sort you're stuck with because of blood, but the one you pick. He filled up the holes that my older brother had left unfilled. My cousin was my partner in everything, from taking second helpings at family lunch to navigating the high school minefield. In high school, I met the lady who would eventually become my wife. She was not only attractive, but also magnetic. She drew both my cousin and me in, and we developed feelings for her at the time. But as a close-knit team, we had an unspoken ceasefire. We would only move if the other gave their approval. He eventually offered his blessing. Back then, I had yet to learn why. She selected me. However, I now have a better notion. We started dating in our senior year and were married by our mid-20s. My cousin was my best man, and I remember thinking, oh boy, this is the ideal life. I've got the woman of my dreams, my closest friend by my side, and the kind of family relationships that others covet. But you're aware of how life tends to screw you over, right? It has screwed me over. My wife and I moved into a modest, tiny house. My cousin lived a few towns away but came around as frequently as if he lived next door. Weekends were spent with barbecues, football, and beers on the porch. We did everything. At first, I thought my wife and cousin were too close, but we all grew up together, so it may be natural. They had always had a natural camaraderie, but things began to feel different. There were lingering glances, inside jokes I wasn't aware of, and the silence that descends when you walk into a room where everyone is just talking about you. But I'm not sure why. I just chalked it up to their great connection. After all, we met her simultaneously and developed a strong bond with her. So, whenever the suspicion grew, I ignored it, and it gradually died out ultimately. My cousin married a gorgeous woman named Maria and ran a very successful business, so he wasn't around as often. He was always accompanied by his wife and would rarely come to the house alone. I'd always followed a routine. Every Wednesday and Saturday evening, I'd go to a park a few miles away to hang out with a group of local guys. It was nothing fancy. It was simply a method to stretch our legs, joke about, and talk about light activities. On this particular Wednesday, however, the weather had different ideas. Midway through our lesson, torrential rain fell unexpectedly, scattering everyone. Normally, we check the weather, especially during the rainy season, and change the day or time if there is a chance of rain. But we didn't see this coming. So for once, I arrived home sooner than usual. Something seemed weird from the moment I came in. 2 wine glasses were resting on the coffee table, which struck me as odd because we had yet to have guests over, and my wife Tina wasn't exactly a social butterfly with neighbors. The house smelled faintly of perfume, something Tina didn't usually use. When she saw me, her manner became agitated, almost comically so. I noticed her throwing something into the trash can in the kitchen. Stupidly, I just remembered I needed to look into what was too late. When she saw me, she froze like a deer in the headlights. When I asked her why she appeared so surprised, her chuckle was nervous and strained, but I hadn't pressed her yet. Meanwhile, while we were both in the bathroom, I noticed 2 wine glasses with proof of beverages and asked if we had unexpected company and why she had yet to contact or tell me until then. She just casually replied, which I now realize was a lie, that my cousin's wife had stopped by to say hello as she was going elsewhere. That made me pause. My cousin's wife. She's been abroad for a time. Tina was handling some business and everyone in the family knew it. We were all excited about the new development, especially because she was the backbone of her family and my cousin had a lucrative position at her company. Nepotism for the win. My first reaction was disbelief, like, wait, she's back? Although we were not particularly close, she would have said something, or my cousin would have. I was genuinely perplexed, and before I could explore any further, my wife abruptly changed the subject, mentioning how in the mood she was because she was cold and needed some of my warmth. I mistakenly dismissed the entire situation, convincing myself it was simply a misunderstanding. But the thought persisted, nagging like an itch I couldn't scratch. Yes, at the moment I shamefully let it slide from my mind because I wanted some. However, my suspicions developed, and when I finally had my cousin alone without my wife hovering about, I decided to move. We went to a bar, and I paid so he could drink as much as he wanted. If I had approached him under normal conditions, he might have encouraged me to confront my wife instead of him, especially if I had concerns with her rather than him. As I previously stated, he is a clever guy, and as much as I wanted to ask him where his wife was, he would have wanted to know why I inquired about her location, because I never do. But I did that day. I asked directly as to when she had returned home. He looked perplexed and, while shaking his intoxicated head, revealed that she was still overseas and wouldn't be back for another 2 weeks at least, because the investor she had received had recommended her to stay back to network with additional businesses. That response hit me like a gut punch. I tried to keep my expression neutral and immediately changed the subject, but warning bells were ringing. The individual who had visited her clearly could not have done so. I waited till the morning to face Tina since when I arrived home, she was dead asleep. I'll try to write it as I recall the conversation. Still, my memory isn't what it used to be, and I'll try to relive the feelings around that time. I know you've been cheating on me, I said bluntly, and my tone was colder than I expected. She began sobbing almost immediately, rejecting it outright. I'm not cheating, I swear, she cried. I've been seeing someone, but not in the way you expect. I have been seeing a psychologist. Looking back, it seems unusual that she didn't even try to figure out why I would have believed that. A psychologist? I repeated skeptically. Yes, I've been depressed since we've been struggling to conceive. I didn't want to tell you since you've always denied that depression exists, and I feared you'd judge me. I'd never mentioned that before, so I was even more perplexed. I stared at her, trying to process everything. Then she said, If you don't believe me, call your cousin. He knows. I told him everything, and he even urged that I keep it quiet to prevent criticism. I was reeling but decided to contact my cousin. Surprisingly, he confirmed her narrative and urged me to respect her privacy. He even warned me not to contact the doctor since it could set her back in her mental health path. Honestly, as suspicious as I was, asking her question after question to debunk what she was saying would be relatively insensitive if what she was saying was genuine. So I decided to proceed with caution. I let it go for a while, convinced that I had overreacted. But something still seemed wrong. Perhaps it was her unusual behavior or the timing of her explanations. Whatever it was, it gnawed at me enough that I installed hidden cameras throughout the house, not out of anxiety, but to set my mind at rest, maybe to rule out the other ideas I was terrified of and see if I could find evidence of the truth. She claimed she would travel to his office most of the time but pay extra for home visits on occasion. This sounded highly implausible to me because I didn't even realize therapists made house visits. However, a short search revealed that some genuinely do. Nobody showed up for a long time after I set up the cameras, and I began to feel bad. I wondered if my discovery had caused Tina to take a break from the sessions, perhaps because she felt exposed or because she had decided to seek it outside the home for good. Yes, I inquired how she was paying for it, as I did not see any bills indicating such. She stated that she had paid out of pocket to preserve her privacy. It appeared that everything revolved around safeguarding her privacy from her husband. Months passed, and life returned to some degree of normalcy. Not because I had forgotten, but because I needed to be specific, and I was not going to make reckless decisions based solely on assumptions. That is until I decided to verify the footage stored on the SD card. One afternoon, I began fast-forwarding through the clips, searching for anything out of place. That's when I spotted something weird. In one video, my cousin appears uninvited. We sat around in the living room playing video games and joking as we always did. He proposed we play an old game we learned as college students, stating he'd win this time. I walked to the garage to sort through an old collection of games I had stored there, leaving him at home. Betrayal can have serious consequences that few people discuss. My cousin entered the kitchen where Tina was preparing dinner. The film shows them having a furious dispute. The audio could have been better because I hadn't prioritized it while placing the cameras, but I could hear her inquiring when he would divorce his wife. I remember thinking it was bizarre that she considered that her business. We were all pals, and I never imagined it could be something terrible. My cousin tried to calm her down with a hug and stated something about his wife signing over extra shares before their divorce. My wife's voice took on a desperate tone I had not heard before. She stated she was ready to divorce me when I confronted her, but he wasn't, so she didn't do it. She said she had done everything he had asked. Then, to cement their betrayal in my mind, they closed their disagreement with a passionate kiss that looked like something out of a movie. My chest ache was awful. I watched as my cousin strolled back into the living room just as I returned with the game, beaming like a fool. We resumed bantering as if nothing had happened. That finding altered everything. I sat in silence for hours, my thoughts whirling. My cousin and wife had deceived me in the worst way. It wasn't just the cheating, but the intricate web of falsehoods. The entire psychological reason they constructed was outright deception. Oddly, I was angrier with him than with her. His betrayal went deeper. He was more than simply family to me. He was also a friend, brother, and confidant. The pain was terrible. Instead of acting on impulse, I chose to be strategic. If they thought they were intelligent, I would outwit them. I made copies of the footage and saved them on other devices. Losing evidence was not an option. Then I contacted my cousin's wife, Maria, to catch up. She had always been grounded, and I gently mentioned her spouse over coffee. I inquired about their marital status and casually commented how busy he appeared lately. Maria chuckled nervously and revealed that her husband was quite busy with work and trips, and that she rarely saw him. Trips? He had never mentioned those to me. At that point, I realized what had happened. My wife had also started taking travels around the same period, purportedly for work. But I knew better now. Still, I had yet to reach out to link the dots further. I was there to tell Maria about the affair, thinking she'd be better able to determine what to do next. I showed her the tape, hoping to lessen the impact and prepare her for the truth. Her cheeks paled as she saw her husband and my wife kiss in the kitchen. By the end, her hands trembled, and she was sobbing. We sat quietly sipping our beverages until she asked what we would do next. That's what we talked about for hours. Maria revealed that her husband had been urging her to transfer more business shares into his name, claiming he wanted a more significant role and would pay for it later. She said she had been wary from the start, but had recently begun to give in to his desires. Maria showed she could no longer stay with him. It was not negotiable. She proposed using her divorce as leverage. Meanwhile, I was the oblivious spouse at home. Tina had no idea what I'd discovered, and I gave her no cause to assume I was watching her. Instead, I focused on safeguarding my finances. I diverted funds through my mother by making a sizable monetary contribution and advising her to invest in Maria's firm. This ensured Tina would have little to claim in our future divorce. My cousin panicked as Maria's divorce developed. He implored Maria not to abandon him, even offering to step away from the firm. She appeared to hear his pleadings while strengthening her legal case against him. She eventually offered him a deal. If he kept the details of her divorce hidden, especially from Tina, he would receive a modest severance package. If he refused, Maria swore to reveal his dirty laundry and guarantee that he would leave with nothing. The greedy bastard accepted the deal. When Maria's divorce was finalized, I was ready to take things to the next level. I realized I couldn't lose time because my cousin would most likely inform Tina at some point. I didn't trust him to follow his word, so I focused on my next move. Within hours, I delivered the divorce papers to Tina. Keeping my tone calm and detached, I informed her I couldn't take it anymore and simply put, I wanted a divorce. To my surprise, she didn't put up much resistance. She just asked why I wanted a divorce, and I told her it was because I no longer loved her and believed her depression was a cover for something else, but I made it appear as if I didn't know much. She attempted to be sympathetic, but I could tell she was anxious to move on, probably thinking she'd be free to pursue my cousin. We negotiated a settlement before going to court, which was in my favor. Tina received a fraction of what she had hoped for because most of my assets were invested in Maria's business. She still appeared joyful, possibly believing my cousin would care for her nonetheless. The actual shock occurred once the divorce was completed. Tina had no notion that while my cousin was well off for a bachelor, he didn't have the fortune she assumed he possessed. Despite his failed effort to grab more shares, they discussed their future and married in a modest, covert ceremony. When the news broke, it was enough to exclude them from our extended family. My cousin knew he didn't have the money Tina probably expected, but he also knew he'd lose her if he spoke the truth. So he opted to risk losing only one thing rather than both. He performed some of the hard work for us, but it wasn't until they married that he could tell her everything. This included how much I knew and how her affair would have been revealed if she had gone to court with me. I could have utilized this to negotiate a better deal, but she chose the easy route since she wanted to get out immediately. I believe it was when she found out that she approached me, apologizing and pleading for forgiveness, but of course I couldn't care less. Later, I learned she did the same with Maria, begging and pleading. I ended up barring my ex-wife on all platforms. She had left her marriage for a man who couldn't give her what she desired. Ultimately, they had each other's affection for the day and received closure. When did she start to cheat on me? Was it before or after our marriage? How many times did it occur, and with how many people? Did she choose me because I had more prospects than my cousin and then go to him after his wife's business boosted his status? The truth is that when someone cheats, you won't get those answers. Even if they give you answers, no one will acknowledge every betrayal. It aches. But not all is bleak. Maria and I became much closer over this time, which is my favorite part of the ordeal. We're keeping things simple for now and agreeing to take things slowly. No marriage is on the table right now, especially after everything we've been through. We didn't force it. It happened spontaneously, and I am happier than I have been in a long time. It's not the same as my cousin did because we respected our boundaries while they existed. We're focused on growing together and rebuilding our lives, ensuring that we're never hurt again. Maybe at the end of something horrible, there was something beautiful waiting for the two of us. It's no surprise I feel this way. It kills to think that while I was trying to make sense of everything, they were going on behind my back. Their everyday playlist could have been a lot better. It's heartbreaking when something as meaningful as music, a crucial part of my marriage, becomes part of their secret bond. Shame on them. I'm focused on myself and the future, what makes me happy and what helps me heal. As much as it hurts now, this chapter will not define my life. Their choices reflected their flaws, not mine. That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed this tale or found it relatable, please give it a thumbs up and share your opinions in the comments section. Remember to subscribe and enable the notification bell so you don't miss an update. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.